All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Invasive Phragmites Control Fund General Information webinar. My name is Madeline Schuster. I'm the Communications and Administration Coordinator at the Invasive Species Center, and I'll be your moderator for today. This morning, we'll be going through the applicant guide and giving you information on how to apply for the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. You'll have the opportunity to ask our speaker, Kendra Jolly, the grants coordinator at the ISC, any questions at the end of the presentation, but feel free to ask questions in the chat during the presentation, and I'll do my best to answer them. But at the end, please put any questions into the Q&A. It'll just make it easier for me to review them and post them to Kendra. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll pass it over to Kendra now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Madeline. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for our first of two webinars related to the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. This is going to be our general information webinar. We're going to give you some background on the program. We're going to give you some background on the Ontario Phragmites Action or OPA program. And then we're going to go over some of the things that you can expect as you're working your way through the application for the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. So I am going to be going off camera just so we can ensure we've got some good quality while we go through the slides here. And like Madeline mentioned, we will absolutely have time for any questions that you might have at the end of the presentation. Excellent. All right, so again, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar. So first, some background on invasive Phragmites. A lot of us are likely already aware, but Ontario shorelines, wetlands, and roadsides are increasingly being taken over by tall, dense stands of common reed Phragmites, sometimes referred to as Canada's worst invasive plant species. Invasive species are one of the greatest threats to biodiversity and are estimated to cause $3.6 billion in impacts to agriculture, forestry, fisheries, healthcare, tourism, and recreation in Ontario annually. So that's every year. Invasive Phragmites is especially problematic as its growth can affect agriculture, tourism, wildlife. It can reduce property values. It can contribute to road safety hazards, and it can impact recreational activities such as swimming, boating, and fishing. So we have the Ontario Phragmites Action Program that has just recently launched, and this is an exciting new approach to landscape scale Phragmites control in Ontario. We are trying to bring communities and regions together to try and combat Phragmites as a team rather than taking on individually in individual organizations. So before we dive into the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, we want to give you some background on the new program, so the Ontario Phragmites Action or OPA program. So as some of you might have heard, in 2024, the province of Ontario did announce an exciting new investment of $11 million over 3 years to create a new program to help coordinate enhanced action on Phragmites across Ontario. This program is going to support and expand on existing efforts in the province. And it's also going to allow for coordination across jurisdictions, and it's going to involve important parties, including municipalities, conservation authorities, Indigenous communities, and NGOs or non-governmental organizations. So what is OPA? So this program is a brand new 3-year program funded by the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources. It again is going to strive to provide that landscape scale coordinated response to invasive Phragmites management in Ontario by connecting local groups across the province in harmonized management. We're going to be able to share knowledge, share techniques. We're going to be able to work collaboratively and try and manage it on a large scale as opposed to, again, those smaller groups happening kind of on their own. So the purpose of OPA. Phragmites does not respect property lines. It's not going to stop at a roadside just because it's private property. It's not going to stop at a roadside because it's protected property. It goes wherever it wants to go, unfortunately. So collaboration across the fence is essential for long-term success. It always works better when we're able to work collaboratively. So the successful program works with a variety of actors, including municipalities, conservation authorities, Indigenous communities, community groups, and many more. So projects are often localized in scale and may be occurring alongside other efforts. We have jurisdictional boundaries that can create obstacles or limit implementation by individual groups. Coordination through the regional lens is going to allow the opportunity to leverage available resources, expertise, and funds. So it's no longer going to be an individual issue that we're dealing with. It's going to become a province-wide regional issue that we're trying to manage together. So to successfully manage Phragmites, an integrated landscape scale implementation plan that includes all of the necessary partners, right holders, and interest groups within a region is absolutely needed. So we have areas that are called Phragmites management areas. So what are they? So a Phragmites management area, or a PMA, is a spatial unit where Phragmites monitoring and control activities are coordinated. They can be defined by a number of factors. It can be a municipal boundary, can be a watershed, it can be an MNR, or Ministry of Natural Resource District, it can be a treaty boundary, or any number of other factors. Okay? We have a PMA working group, and this is a collection of organizations or individuals, businesses, industry and government representatives, or other key implementation partners who are going to contribute to a local implementation of the Phragmites guidebook. So we're bringing all these groups, individuals, knowledge keepers together, working through the Phragmites guidebook, again, on that collaborated plan of attack against Phragmites. If you are part of an organization and you think you might be interested in joining a Phragmites management area, we have 4 regional coordinators. We've got the North region, the South region, the Central region, and the Eastern region. All of their contact information is found here. We will be posting this webinar to our YouTube channel. So if by chance you don't get a chance to get it all written down, it will be posted on YouTube. You can also reach out to myself directly. My email will be up at the end of the presentation, and I can get you in contact with one of the regional coordinators. And they're really helping to bring the groups together and again, get that collaboration happening. All right, so we spoke a little bit about OPA. Now it's time to talk about the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. So we would like to thank the Ministry of Natural Resources for their continued financial support in making this fund possible again. The Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, or as we call it, the IPCF, is now in its 6th year, and we hope to continue supporting great projects as we've done in previous years. That being said, we do have some notable changes from previous cycles. This year, we have funding from $2,500 up to $50,000 available for eligible projects. We're looking at some priority geographies. We have a really strong emphasis on mapping as a first step. So if you've been, kind of wondering, what can I do? What kind of project might be a good start for me? Mapping is a really great start. Get an idea of where Phragmites are in your community. Once you know where they are, then we can work to get that plan together to help working to remove them and eradicate them. We also have the call for proposals that open this month. For those of you that may have attended our webinars in the past or were previous applicants or recipients of IPCF, we didn't have this open until late spring, early summer last year. So we've made some really great strides, and we're implementing as much feedback and constructive criticism as we can to really make this program work as best as it possibly can. And we also want to thank all of you who work on Phragmites, and with your efforts, we are beginning to see some real great progress at many sites. So we want to make sure that we keep that momentum up. So just to show you some of the impacts that we've seen over the last couple of years of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. So this is fiscal year 24. This would be for projects that were completed in February of 2024. So by the numbers, we were able to mobilize 57 groups. We had 14 engaged Indigenous communities, organizations, and 43 municipalities involved. Now, I do want to clarify that doesn't mean that those were the number of Indigenous communities or municipalities that were funded. They were part of projects either as partners or helping, but didn't necessarily receive the funds themselves. Okay. We were absolutely oversubscribed by $345,000 and delivered the program efficiently. We were able to support nearly 500 staff and volunteers in on-the-ground action to prevent and manage invasive Phragmites. So that was fiscal year 24. And just to show how we do have that continued growth year over year, these are the numbers that we are looking at for fiscal year 2024, 2025. And this would be for projects that are going to be completed in February of 2025. So the current cycle that we have going. This year, we've had 89 Indigenous community groups or organizations, plus 125 communities in invasive Phragmites work, 115 staff positions, 1,001 volunteers, 920 collaborative partners. And the most important part is every dollar of funding is matched. So because we have a matching requirement for the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, we're able to double the impact of the fund by having that matching requirement. Okay. So again, another just brief stipulation. These are self-reported numbers by the current recipients. These are anticipated numbers and they are subject to change based off of final reports, but some really great things that we are seeing and we're really excited about. So the program objectives that we have for the IPCF this year, this fund is going to support collaborative action in Ontario to, again, like I mentioned, map. So map and develop integrated collaborative plans to prevent and control invasive Phragmites at scale. So watersheds, municipalities, regions. Okay. Also going to be considering post-management restoration and prevent reestablishment. We also want to amplify and expand Phragmites control and implementation. We want to address the leading edge and rapid spread of Phragmites and increase that collaboration and coordination, volunteer and landowner participation and capacity. So these are all of the program objectives. This is what we're hoping to achieve year after year with the IPCF. We do have some funding priorities as well. And I would like to note that more than one category of funding priority can be requested in one application. You can also have multiple sites in one application. You do not have to submit, you can have in one application. You do not have to submit multiple applications for multiple sites. You can have that all in one there to keep it a little bit easier on your end. So Phragmites mapping, monitoring, and planning. So activities such as mapping surveys, developing those integrated plans for prevention, control and considering post-management restoration to prevent that reestablishment, employing a regional approach to planning, consulting fees, budgets, partner engagement, landowner engagement, equipment. All of these items are going to be considered under that Phragmites mapping, monitoring, and planning category. Phragmites control implementation. So following those integrated pest management approach, prevention, spading, physical and mechanical removal, chemical removal, prescribed burns, cutting, rolling, biocontrol, equipment purchasing or rental. Again, all of these items are going to be included under the control implementation priority. Phragmites innovation. So advancing the use of innovative prevention and control techniques available for Eastern Ontario. So is there a new technique that you've been wanting to try out but you're not sure of? Is there a new technique that you have developed? If you've got an innovative way of dealing with Phragmites, we would love to hear about it. And it is one of our priorities again this year. So eligible applicants, this is one of the questions that we get asked quite often. Who will the IPCF support? So for this fiscal year, again, the 25-26 cycle that's just open for applications, we want to support Indigenous governments, communities, or organizations. We want to support municipalities and conservation authorities, other groups or organizations in Ontario, including community collaboratives, nonprofit and charitable organizations. So if you have a homeowners association, a ratepayers association, a lake association, all of those types of groups are going to be included and eligible for funding through the IPCF. Unfortunately, there are some groups that we're unable to support, and these are going to be projects proposed by private individuals. So if you are a private individual, you are not part of an organization, maybe you have some Phragmites on your own private property, you would need to work collaboratively with another group in order for that project to be eligible. If you're not sure and you want to clarify, please feel free to reach out to myself. I would be very happy to have that conversation with you. We are also unable to support provincial or federal government agencies, and we are unable to support projects that will be occurring outside of Ontario. So here we have got a draft budget for you, and I would like to say this is a fictitious budget. The funding that is mentioned here is not an actual fund, just to kind of give you an idea of what a budget might look like. And this is an Excel file that that you're able to download through Good Grants, the platform where we have our application for the fund. You would download this Excel file and fill it out. You're able to add rows, you're able to add context, you're able to provide details. So we've got our categories, and this is going to include salaries and human resources, travel and accommodations, professional services, equipment and supplies, purchase, equipment and supplies rentals, communication, and administration. So if we're looking at a budget, maybe you want to have a project coordinator and they're going to need some staff time to map and monitor Phragmites across 4 municipal parks. So you're going to be requesting, or in this example, I should say, they are requesting $500 from ISAC, but they're also going to contribute $700 in cash and $1,250 in-kind contributions. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. We also have an upcoming webinar on Monday that focuses more on the budget and the in-kind side of things. So if we're going through this quickly, we do have more detail coming for you coming up on Monday. So under the budget item column, you're able to provide those details. For the funding request and the matching columns, we're asking just for dollar values only. And then under the sources of in-kind contributions, this is where we're going to ask that you detail where the in-kind contribution is coming from as part of your budget. So in this situation, we have 28 hours at $25 an hour. That's the $700 that's coming in from the Parks and Community Fund. And then for the $12.50, that's going to be in kind at $50 an hour at $25 an hour. Or sorry, 50 hours at $25 an hour. Mercs included. And when we're talking about mercs, those are going to be those mandatory employment related costs. So your taxes, your deductions, things like that. So the overall budget line for salaries and human resources is $2,450. We've then got travel and accommodations. In this scenario, it's for mileage only. It can account for accommodations if a hotel stay is needed. In this situation, the applicant is contributing that $75.44, and that's based at 41 cents a kilometer, going at 184 kilometers for $75.44. Professional services, they're requesting $2,000 from the Phrag Fund for the contractor fee to treat, remove Phragmites. This is going to include staff time and equipment costs, and they're estimated roughly 1 day at the daily rate of that $2,000. Okay. No in-kind contributions for this line item, and that's just fine. Okay. We have equipment and supplies purchase, so mapping equipment and additional software license. So in this scenario, they're requesting $130 for a software license. And then they're going to be including $1,200 in kind because they are using 2 of their own tablets. Again, in this scenario, that cost a little high for a tablet, but it's what we have here for our scenario. I wouldn't necessarily put that into your actual budget unless you're able to, have the backup for that. So for this line item, it's $1,330 that they are requesting. Equipment and supplies rental, they're looking for a trailer rental for plant material disposal. They're going to contribute that $80 in cash, and that's coming in again from the fictitious Parks and Community Fund. They're not requesting anything from the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund for this line item. Same with communications, they want to print temporary signage for public notification. They're going to contribute that in kind, so $60. Maybe that's being donated by the signage company. Maybe it's signage that they've already got on hand. And that's going to come in as in kind. So that is $60 for 3 signs at $20 each. And then we come down to administration. I do want to let you know there is a 10% hard cap on administration fees. So if you are going to be applying for funding for administration through the Frag Fund, make sure that is capped at 10%. The reviewers do take note of that if there is a difference. So that's going to give us a funding request of $3,169.54 through the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. We've got matching and in-kind contributions of $855.44 and $2,510. That's going to give us an overall project budget of $6,534.80, or sorry, 98 cents, I should say. And as we can see here, even though it's not, the math isn't quite done for us fully, the funding request is at 3169, and we can do the math there a little bit, and we can tell that the 2510 plus the 855 is going to put this project over and above the one-to-one matching requirement for the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. If you are able to come in over the one-to-one, that is fantastic. If you're only able to come in meeting that one-to-one, that is fantastic as well. When we're talking about the in-kind contributions, whether that be cash or whether that be in kind, we see them as one and the same. One is not better than the other. We don't, consider cash as being worth more in a project than in-kind contributions. So if they're coming in that way, that is just fine. Again, one is not better than the other. They are equal in the eyes of the Invasive Species Center, OPA, and the reviewers as they're going through the projects and scoring them. Now we've got our key performance indicators table. This is just a brief overview, and this does not cover all of the key performance indicators that you're going to see in the application. Now, we also understand that not every project is going to have every single KPI as part of their project, and that is okay. Fill in the table to the best of your abilities, include the numbers as best you can. We also understand that things can change as you're going through your project. So we understand that what you tell us at the beginning of the project, things happen over time, things change. It may not be the same at the end, and that's okay. As long as you're, in communication with us, you're letting us know what's going on, we can make sure that we're on the same page and get that updated. This is also not going to be all of the KPIs that you will see as you're going through the application. There are a few other ones limited for space on the PowerPoint, but this does give you a good idea. We ask you kind of give you a brief description as to what you were looking for. And if you have some zeros in there, that is just fine. It's not going to take your project out of the running. It's not going to be seen as a negative. Again, because we understand there are going to be some projects where it's not feasible to have volunteers in there. It might not be feasible to have youth out helping. So we understand that. Please don't let that be a deterrent. So some key dates for you and timelines. The call for proposals is now open for the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. The call for proposals does close February 12th, that's a Wednesday, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. If your application is not received by that time, unfortunately, we are unable to accept anything past that. Once the call for proposals closes, we're going to go through our review process. Our target to notify successful applicants is March of 2025. All applicants, whether they're successful or not, that's the timeline that we are aiming for, is March, to give us time to do those reviews, have the discussions, and get those notifications out there. We're looking to have funding agreements executed between April and May of 2025. And then final reporting for any successful applicants will be on February 6th of 2026. So way in the future. And all spending must also be done by February 6th, 2026 for that fiscal year. If you're looking for some additional information on that, you're able to go to our website, invasivespeciescenter.ca /grant opportunities. All of the details can be found there, as well as our applicant guide, some FAQs, a lot of really great resources on our website. So we also want to mention communications. Really important that we're able to tell the story of Phragmites. And if we work together, it's going to impact and help us have successful projects. So we plan for news releases, We plan to announce the approved projects. We do regional news releases, and having pictures and your story really helps us do that. We also offer draft communication materials for your use, such as draft news release templates and social media posts. So if you're not really sure kind of what you're looking for to post out there or what you're wanting to post, we can help you build that out. We're also asking that you please collect as many before and after photos as you can, as again, this is going to help tell the story. We get a lot of requests from media asking for stories in their regions and their communities, and having these photos on hand really helps us respond to that quickly. And not just before and after photos, photos of the work occurring, photos of the volunteer events, any events that you're having. Take as many photos as you can. We would really appreciate that, and it really does help us spread the news. So some suggestions if you're going to be applying to the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, and we really do hope that you do. So please consider an integrated Phragmites management approach and consider all possible methods for the site. So don't just focus in on, a chemical control. Maybe there's other options for the site. We want to see the big picture, see what you can consider all of those management approaches. All of the projects must adhere to these of the Phragmites key standard resources. This is going to include the best management guide, the technical bulletin, the Phragmites guidebook, binational resources through the Great Lakes Commission, and all of these resources can be found linked at OntarioPhragmitesAction.ca. It's a really great idea to work with partners, aim for regional collaboration. So have that collaboration amongst groups, and again, have at least that one-to-one leverage of funds. And like we looked at in the budget breakdown and that scenario there, we do ask that you quantify in kind and cash contributions as much as you possibly can. So to complete your application, this year we are again using the Good Grants platform to manage applications and the management of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. You will need to visit isc.grantplatform.com to create an account. And this is only if you haven't created an account previously. If you have previously applied for the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, or if you have previously applied for the Invasive Species Action Fund, which is also currently open for the next fiscal year for applications. If you've already got one, you do not have to create a new account. Just use the old account that you have been using. With the program, you have the ability to start an application, you can save it, you can return to it and finish it at a later date. You're also able to complete edits on submitted applications up until the closing date. For your applications to be considered, they do need to be submitted again by February 12th, 2025. If it is still in process upon closing, and unfortunately we did have the scenario happen, it will not be eligible. It does need to be submitted. And only applications that are submitted through Good Grants will be considered for funding. If you try and submit an application via email, it will not reach the reviewers. It will not be considered for funding. So again, big caveat, please do not forget to submit that final application. So we do have some frequently asked questions that we would like to address with you. So can multiple applications be submitted for different projects by the same organization? In short, yes. There is no cap on the number of submissions from a single organization. That being said, we do encourage you to coordinate internally and submit only the strongest project proposals. We want to focus on quality, not quantity. The number of proposals that are being sent in is not going to increase your chances of receiving funding. The quality of your proposals, that is what's going to help increase those chances. Are letters of support required? No. So they are not a requirement of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. That being said, we do ask for any partners to be identified and that their contributions can be quantified in the budget table. So very much like we looked at, you can include those details. Should any partner's contributions be rescoped in a substantial way after submission or during a project, we do ask that you please notify us. That way we're aware of it. We can try and work with you to to work around it, or to get another plan in place. As you're going through your budgets, to kind of add on to this, if you're ever uncertain about something, add more detail. If you're not sure if this is proper or you're not sure if this qualifies, add as much detail as you can, and we can take a look at that. You're also able, again, to reach out to myself at any time. I will say the number of inquiries is far larger than we anticipated this time around. So it may take a couple of days for me to get back to you, but I will absolutely get back to you to address any questions. Is there a stacking limit or a matching requirement? So as I mentioned a few times, yes, this cycle of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund does require that projects meet or exceed a 1-to-1 match ratio. Cash versus in kind. So again, we consider any outside contribution, whether that's cash or in kind. So a directly cash contribution or in kind being volunteer hours, equipment that you have, and we'll go over a bunch of other in kind types on Monday. But again, they're all weighted equally. And we acknowledge that approaches assessing true in-kind contributions can vary. So we have provided a series of probing questions in the applicant guide to ensure that applicants capture all sources of non-invasive Phragmites Control Fund contributions. The applicant guide, I will say, is a fabulous resource. It outlines everything that we're looking for. It outlines all of the requirements. It details in-kind contributions in depth as far as what is considered an in-kind contribution, whether or not you should consider adding it to your budget, because we have been finding that a lot of in-kind contributions aren't being collected. So we want to make sure that that is being done correctly and that you are getting value for what you're bringing to your project outside of cash and outside of what you are requesting. And like I mentioned previously, for additional information on budgeting and in-kind contributions, Monday, December 16th at 11 a.m., you can register on our website at the same spot where you registered for this webinar this morning. Is there any way that I can get early approval for my project? No, unfortunately, not this year. So the call for proposals does close February 12th, 2025, and all applications will be considered equally at that time. We are not able to offer those pre-approvals, but if successful, you will receive a letter of authorization, again, aiming to be in March of 2025. If you have questions about your application, they're very specific to your organization, again, reach out to me and I'll be happy to have that conversation. Can funding be used to train staff, such as an exterminator or licensing a technician? Absolutely, 100%. That is going to be an eligible cost. We look at this as building capacity for future work, and it still has specific outcomes for the project that you're going to be supporting and working on currently. So if that is something that you've been wondering, 100%, we will support that. Is funding available for small scale volunteer community Phragmites projects? Yes. So the IPCF has a minimum threshold of $2,500 to a maximum of $50,000 for projects delivering corresponding impacts. So as long as the budget for your project falls within the parameters, it will absolutely be considered. Excuse me. Can the fund be used for projects that begin earlier this year, or is it to be used only for new projects? Awarded funds can go towards projects already in progress. However, the funds can only go towards eligible expenses that are incurred after the receipt of the letter of authorization by successful applicants. Am I able to be approved for the next, excuse me, am I able to be approved for the next cycle of funding so that I can plan for our project next year? Unfortunately, in short, no. This round of funding does not include pre-approvals, and any funded projects must be completed within the fiscal year. That being said, we would also ask that you please do indicate in your final report the next steps on your project. Another thing I would like to say as well, when you are building out your project proposal, we encourage you to include any future work as well. So not just the work that you're going to be doing this year. So even though we can't pre-approve future projects, we're unable to commit to multi-year funding at this time, let us know the work that you're going to be doing currently and the work that you plan on doing moving into the future. That helps us see the big picture, and the reviewers really love to see that. All right, so now we have some time for any questions, any feedback that you might have. We welcome your project proposals through Good Grants, and we are happy to field any general questions that you have here via the Q&A function. And after reviewing the applicant guide, please direct any application-specific questions to myself, Kendra Jolly, the administrator of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund.
Thank you for that presentation, Kendra. It looks like we have a couple questions in the Q&A. So the first question is, does a community collaborative have to be registered anywhere to be considered eligible, or would a group of neighboring landowners fit this description, for example?
So if you have a community association that has their own bank account, that would be eligible. If you are a group of private landowners that doesn't have a bank account, you would want to try and collaborate either with the municipality, a conservation authority, a ratepayers association, something to that effect, and have them submit collaboratively with you.
The next question we have is, how can we find out if our municipality has already committed work in our targeted area?
The best way to do that would be to reach out directly to the municipality. They don't tell us their plans, so we're unable to speak on their behalf. So reach out to them and they can let you know what's happening in your area.
I don't see any other questions yet, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A now.
And again, if there are no questions, you are welcome to reach out to myself directly afterwards. I would strongly encourage you to read through the applicant guide first, and then anything that's not addressed in the applicant guide, I would be happy to discuss with you.
All right. If there's no further questions, thank you again to Kendra for presenting today, and thank you all for tuning in. Just a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be posted on our website as well as our YouTube channel. And if you're interested in learning more about the Invasive Phragmites Action Fund, that budget and in-kind contribution webinar will be next Monday on December 16th. All right.
Thank you for joining us this morning. And again, this will be posted to our YouTube channel likely early next week if there are any colleagues or others that you would like to share with. Thank you for your help this morning, Madeline.
No problem.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.